The sequence here from start to finish, the very first frame to the last frame, is about 45 minutes in time. So in 45 minutes, the eye has gone from there to there. So the clearing. So if you project that ahead about another 10 minutes or so, it's going to be very, very close to where Roger is. And again, I'm not exactly sure how far inland he is, so that'll make a difference, you know, for 5 or 10 minutes either way. But it's getting close. Right now, he's suffering through the worst of the storm. Thank goodness for him that the storm is moving, and you know, as fast as it is. So
but you say it only has a few more minutes before he'll get into that eye?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Okay, we're going to try and get back to him and give you an update on that.
And as we said, we do.
Is that these boats must really be lodged, seriously lodged into some kind of debris, because they have not budged with these 80 to 90 mile an hour winds that are pummeling this sailboat in particular. You can see the water is crashing up and over the top of the sailboat, but the sailboat is not, I don't know if they could zoom in a little bit on that sailboat, but it is being pounded, but it is not moving at all. So it really must be just kind of wedged into that debris field right there at the edge of the breakwater there.
Those are sustained winds right now of about how much, William?
I would say sustained winds right now probably 75, 85 miles per hour sustained. Just now getting into it, you know, about 75 with gusts periodically to about 85 miles per hour. That's one of the damages that you have with a hurricane. When a hurricane comes on shore, you don't just have this steady wind, but you have like a...
En esa zona próximamente estará ocurriendo lo mismo. Ok, vamos a hacer conexión. Hace rato que no entrevistamos a nadie del Centro Nacional de Huracanes. Roberto Molleda me está acompañando en estos momentos. Roberto, no son muy buenas noches, pero ¿cómo están las cosas hasta el momento? Y este ciclón sobre la corriente del Golfo, ¿logró por fin intensificarse antes de tocar tierra, o ya ahora que está tocando prácticamente parece que no lo va a hacer?
Bueno, afortunadamente no logró cobrar fuerza, se mantuvo con vientos de 115 millas por hora. Es buena noticia, pero de todas maneras tenemos un huracán de categoría 3, un huracán de mayor intensidad tocando tierra en estos momentos.
Es increíble, Roberto. O sea, qué año, qué temporada más increíble. Yo estoy seguro que tanto tú como yo estaremos recordándonos de esta temporada por muchos, muchos años. ¿Cuál es la impresión de ustedes allá en el Centro Nacional de Huracanes de esta temporada? O sea, ¿ustedes han digerido el hecho de la magnitud de esta temporada ciclónica para la Florida, como que lo han internalizado aún, o todavía es como si estuvieran viviendo una pesadilla?
Sí, yo creo que todavía estamos en el medio de todo esto. No hemos tenido tiempo para sentarnos y a analizar lo que ha pasado, pero estoy seguro ya dentro de unas semanas.
Storm scan and the forecast track, again, making landfall on the east central Florida coast, and still as a hurricane inland, then a tropical storm, and then that curve, that big hard turn to the right, and that would be a prolific severe weather maker again for the southeastern and the United States, the mid-Atlantic, and depending on the exact track could be another significant flooding event for the Appalachians. Okay, forecasters at NHC have officially said Jeanne has made landfall near Stewart with 120 mile an hour winds. So again, the plane did find 115, so they probably did find 120 mile an hour winds. So even though this says 115, they've also upped the winds now. And Stewart is again the area of landfall for Jeanne officially from the Hurricane Center with 120 mile an hour winds. And that's official now from the Hurricane Center. So there's that hard turn to the right. So we're talking about flooding and tornadoes and a lot of beach erosion and high surf and just a lot of potential damage for not only Florida, especially Florida, but for much of the southeastern U.S. and depending on the exact track where this goes, we'll just have to wait and see. Now, as far as the radar is concerned, look at this area emanating from the bottom side of the eye as it makes landfall near Stewart. This is that band that's coming in through Palm Beach and now into parts of northern Broward County. And in this area, it looks like it's rotating more to the east than dropping to the south, but this has some hurricane force wind gusts in it anyway, and some very heavy rains, but it drops off dramatically as you get deeper into Broward County and Miami-Dade. So again, all the difference in the world from Miami-Dade and through Broward, and then especially into Palm Beach, points north into Martin and St. Lucie County. Now, as far as the Doppler radar, this is the bigger view here, and we're looking at the eye of the storm now making landfall, as you can see, inland into Florida's east central coast. and the area surrounding the eye, this right in here, housing some very heavy rains and the high winds. And this feeder band we talked about now all the way down through the Gulf of Mexico, in through now the lower Keys, the Florida Straits, and just pinwheeling right up into the system itself. As the whole area lifts to the north and west tomorrow, these feeder bands, if they do occur, could lift to the north as well. So that may be something we would have to deal with even on Sunday, possibly even into Monday as well. The long-range radar.
Okay, the storm now has made landfall. What is in the near future here for the east coast of Florida? Who is going to be hit hardest now up the coast in the next couple of hours?
Don, it's going to be a long, long night for the folks here, all the way from Palm Beach County up to the Cape. Not only there, but those inland counties too, and even around Lake Okeechobee. They're going to have a significant storm surge even on the eastern side of the lake there. It's going to take some time for this to get up through the peninsula, really all day tomorrow up through North Florida, and then finally by Monday it'll be weakened down likely to a depression into Georgia.
Okay, do we still have any reconnaissance aircraft flying into it this close to the coast at this time?
Right, I like to have what I call shore patrol. The NOAA airplane is on its way back now, actually not to MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, but they're going to recover in New Orleans just to make sure they don't get any strong winds there. The Air Force plane is on its way out there right now, and I just want to make sure we know what the winds are right off the coast there. We've lost some of the surface observing sites in the strong winds, and we want to be real careful there, before we take down any warnings.
Right. So we have an estimate still of about 115 mile an hour maximum sustained winds. Would that be about right?
Feel good about that. Maybe a little bit higher. This last leg that the NOAA Hurricane Hunter plane flew on reported somewhere between 115 and 120 miles per hour. They're off on the north side. They're just east of Indian River County and the southern part of Brevard County. So. And those winds are still yet to come on shore here, so it's been bad enough up there, and it's going to get worse for a little bit longer.
All right, my fear is that 2 weeks ago with Francis, there's an awful lot of debris around, and there's a lot of construction materials and a lot of roof tiles. Are you thinking the same thing I'm thinking, that the damage could be much worse up there than the first time around?
Yeah, all those people that have the blue tarps on the roofs there, those are going to be blown off, and it's really going to be extremely difficult for the insurance adjusters even to determine which storm did what. So it's going to be a real mess, but hopefully people will have heeded the advice there. You were talking about, right before you came to me, I heard you talk a little bit about the advances in forecasting, and there's a lot more to it than just the meteorology too. I mean, it's the land use and the building codes and the communication and the coordination and the education and outreach, and there are a lot of things that have been working pretty well.
All right. Max, would you give us just some idea of what your month and a half has been like here? Because you just don't cover the storms that affect us. We go away sort of after they don't affect us, but you have to continue there. Give us an idea of like a typical day for you in the last couple of months.
Well, my deputy, Ed Rappaport, and I were joking this evening. We talk to each other more than we've been talking to our wives here the last month and a half or so, it seems like. So I'm a little lucky. I've got a sofa bed in my office that I can spend the night on, and not everybody has that. But anyway, we're doing fine. We know what's at stake here, and hopefully we'll have a break here after Jeanne.
All right, so you've got the sofa bed. Ed Rappaport doesn't. What does he have to do to get the sofa bed?
Actually, Ed's in a hotel nearby, so he'll be in early tomorrow morning.
Okay, you know something you don't know. Max, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and I hope you get some sleep soon.
Okay, thank you, Don.
All right, reporting live from the National Hurricane Center, Ed Rappaport. We can joke about it down here, of course, but it's no joking matter for those people upstate right now. Really, our thoughts, best wishes, and prayers are with those people this time.
Don, you and Max were both talking about the wind speed, and I'm curious, before those measuring stations went down, what the upper gusts were of this hurricane.
Well, we had a report of a 63 mile an hour wind sustained at Vero Beach and a gust to about 98 miles per hour on West and Bahama. And now both West Palm Beach and Vero Beach reporting stations are down. The surface stations are down. So we don't have any report there, but there'll be other reports that'll fill in, but not until the storm is over.
And just from what they've learned from the aircraft, they expect those gusts to be well above 110 miles an hour when they come ashore.
Yeah, Max just said, well, I asked him if it was 115. He said, well, it's at least that, maybe 120, and that's sustained wind, and gusts could be 140, 145.
And to compare that to the last hurricane, just so people have some kind of perspective, if they were there for Francis.
It's worse than Francis.
Much worse than Francis.
Yeah.
Can you sort of explain how, when the wind gusts get that high, how it's exponentially worse? It's not just a couple miles an hour. People might think, well, what's the difference of 5 miles an hour? It's a lot when you're talking about wind speed.
Yeah, especially when you get up to winds over hurricane force. If you go from say 100-mile-an-hour wind to 125-mile-an-hour wind, it isn't a 25% increase in damage. It's more like a 50 or 60% increase in damage. And you know, obviously, the higher it is, the more structural damage you have. You know, something like a Category 5 Hurricane Andrew, not much really can stand up to 155, 160-mile-an-hour wind. This is not that. But you know, you're going to have a lot of structural damage, and also a lot of coastal flooding, beach erosion from the pounding of this storm.
I remember your example actually of the pressure on glass. You know, you did the brick example showing that it just exponentially. I mean, you're talking about the pressure on just the glass in your house goes up so dramatically with every 5-10 miles per hour.
Yeah, another thing I want to tell people about, and I don't know how this got started. You know how you see something and you see somebody do something and then you do it yourself. I'm talking about the X on the windows from tape. And I have to confess, really, I did it. You know, when I moved here from Portland, Oregon, I was great on drizzle, but I wasn't really good on tropical storms. And so Hurricane David comes along a couple weeks after I'm here.
Right.
And I see some people, my neighbors are all putting X's on the windows. And I thought, well, these people who live here a long time, they know something I don't know. So I stuck an X on one window until I thought about it. I thought, well, this doesn't do a thing,
right.
Except it leaves an X on your window for a long time. So, you know, people, if you are listening right now and you do that, don't. If you see somebody who does it, fill them in on it, because that does absolutely nothing unless you cover the entire window with tape. Right. And all that does is prevent it from shattering when it breaks.
Well, Don, as we look at these live pictures coming in from Vero Beach, speaking of pats on the back, we need to give you one. You've been in here for all day and all night, and we're going to excuse you for a little while. If Max can go on his couch in his office, we can at least do the same for you. And we're going to let Trent Eric come in and relieve you for just a little bit. So
that's right. Find a sofa bed somewhere. Right. We know there's one at the National Hurricane Center that might be unused at this point. But Don, thanks as always. We really appreciate that.
It's my job. It's my pleasure. This is why I'm here.
Well, your experience matters.
We're lucky you are here. We thank you. And again, we're looking at these.
We have not seen trees come down at all where we have been all night. Good news right there. Only thing we've seen is just small debris with remnants of trees or bushes, but for the most part, trees.
Orlando is about 45 to 50 miles to the north and slightly to the east now, as they are continuing to get some pretty good circulation around the northern part of that eye. But remember, this storm has gone to a Category 3 down to a 1. Earlier today, that eye was located down here around Martin County, and Melbourne was getting pounded by hurricane force winds sustained up to 100 miles per hour. And if you translate that distance from the eye now to Orlando, if this was still a Category 3, obviously it'd be a totally different ball game. But right now, with the storm weakening and continuing to do so, Orlando will just get minimal hurricane force winds, pretty much tropical storm force, the damaging type between 55 miles per hour upwards to the lower 70s throughout much of the early morning hours as the storm continues to push off in that west-northwesterly fashion. So that's the idea, to give you an idea of what we're seeing there in the Orlando area, to compare it to what the actual reporter was showing us as far as conditions outside. It could be a lot worse, but nonetheless, with that said, this is still a hurricane, a Category 1, and it's pretty much past the midpoint now of the state of Florida, moving towards the western sections as a hurricane, and there are hurricane warnings along the western seaboard as well. And remember, if you're just joining us this morning, the hurricane warning for South Florida has pretty much been lifted from Deerfield Beach, which is the northern parts of Broward County. We'll take you into of Broward, just to show you where this is located, is right here just south of Boca Raton in Palm Beach County. From Deerfield northward all the way to St. Augustine, that's what we're seeing as far as the hurricane warning now. It's northward at Deerfield Beach, so that's all of Miami-Dade, all of the Keys, and for the most part, the entire Broward County area except that northern fringe. Let's take you now back wide here to show you what Daytona Beach is experiencing. Daytona's here at the northern parts. Again, outer feeder bands and fringes with the storm. Again, there's Daytona Beach. Some of these feeder bands coming in off the Atlantic are a little stronger. There's some reds, yellows, and oranges located within this. That is because these bands are moving out over the open Atlantic waters and still have the warmer ocean waters and sea surface temperatures to get that fuel from. It feeds off that warm water just like the hurricane does. So that's why some of these outer bands are actually healthier than some of the showers and thunderstorms inland. So that will be a concern and providing some rough surf up around the Daytona area. I don't know if we still have capability to pull that live shot back up, but we can kind of talk about the surf and what we're...
Rode out the night in the clubhouse. You can literally walk through this person's house, not a window left intact, and their belongings soaking wet.
It was kind of rocky in the office. I mean, you could hear things just banging against the, you know, the concrete building, but we made it. You know, there's a reason for it, and this park is really bad right now.
Flooding is everywhere, all up and down US 1. Businesses took another hit. Francis hurt this town. Jeanne may have crippled them.
The thing that's unbelievable is 3 weeks ago, we drove out of our house to come here. We were crying, the other kind of crying, because everything was still here. It was amazing. We couldn't believe it was here.
Yeah.
Now it's all gone.
But you guys are all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very emotional morning for that man. The only comfort is that everyone in his family is okay.
West of 95, and we are east of 95, and we're just east of the, actually west of the Intracoastal here in Riviera Beach.
Gotcha. Well, you know, it's interesting. Here they're flying along, and what drew the attention? All the blue dots.
All the blue dots is right, absolutely. I mean, there's just damage everywhere here.
Well, and let's make the point, too, Walt, there's still a lot further to go north where we know the center of that storm came in. We haven't even seen those pictures yet.
And look at the blue,
right.
and look at Walt to the left in that shot there. That's the blue tarp, no, right there in front of you. That's the blue tarp pulled off that section roof. Look at that.
Correct.
And if you go,
and if you water damage too.
And tilt up, and also look, isn't there's what's that blue patch right in the middle? Is that where it ripped off? Maybe.
Probably so.
Look at that. It looks like that was the piece of wood used to hold down the tarp.
Yeah.
Here's a house that has nothing at all.
Yeah, all the tack strips and everything down for the roof.
Right. Now that looks like it was there after the last storm, getting ready for a new roof,
Right.
and then this storm came along.
And we talked about that. People making plans, constructing new sections, and now those plans have to be redone again.
And can we tell you how dangerous it must have been and how frightening it must have been to be in this neighborhood last night with that kind of loose flying debris moving around in hurricane force winds?
It would have been like a cloud of roof tiles.
Right.
I mean, look how many roof tiles we're seeing that are just absolutely. That had to be surreal to see that. And again, as you're saying, these are veterans here. These are folks that went through this 3 weeks ago, and now here we go again.
You know, let's put out the call. If you're living in the neighborhood that we're shooting right now, we'd love to hear from you right here at Local 10. If you give us a call on our news desk, we'd love to talk to you live on the air. Our number here is 305-325-2370. That's our news desk. And let me give you that number one more time. We'd like to talk to you if you're living in this neighborhood. 305-325-2370.
And you know, this is a little bit north, so if the folks can't hear us, maybe you know somebody that lives up there. I mean, you could certainly help us clue in to get an idea exactly what happened. Walt, the two boats that you saw to your left there, that's obviously a storage area. I don't want people to think that those were picked up and brought there, but I see a number of boats that were stored there, but obviously they weren't stored too well.
That's right. Yeah.
And we're not seeing any people walking around. We saw a couple of guys up on the roof.
One car.
One car.
I'm not quite sure where the people are. Obviously, maybe they're still inside their homes on this Sunday morning.
Right, right.
Well, they've advised people, you know, really, if you don't have to go out just yet, don't, for a lot of reasons. But, you know, here's somebody surveying the damage here, giving the high sign. He's probably checking on a neighbor here. Yeah, here you got some guys sitting outside, and they're probably sharing stories right now of what happened there. Boy, the stories they've got to tell.
Storms later this afternoon, so still very unsettled for us today. So we've been so fortunate. We don't want to mess it up now, trying to get out a little too early. But there's that eye continuing to move to the west and northwest, not north enough to get Tampa out of the mix for sure, and Orlando and on into Daytona, and then eventually Jacksonville also will get some of those heavier bands. So it's a statewide deal once again. Still windy through the afternoon, periods of rain coming in, and some of those have been heavier in Broward simply because of your proximity.
Water. This is the visible satellite and shows all of the cloud tops, and that's why you see some little breaks in there. That's sunshine, but then it's followed by more clouds. So sometimes from the Eastern Financial camera and our other cameras, you see some sunshine, and then sometimes you don't. All of a sudden, the sunshine is gone, and it's a return to clouds. Right now, it's still a Category 1 system. By 8 p.m. tonight, hopefully dropping down to a tropical storm, and then keeping on to the north, and hopefully not affecting those folks who have been affected once before. All right, here is the system on the satellite picture, and you can see there is still some convection with it. And the folks in Tampa Bay better be getting ready for it because it is.
Contact with Chuck, unfortunately, we lost it. We're going to switch over and take you back north to Daytona Beach.
We saw the high wind there pounding the beach. We've seen some stories on beach erosion already this afternoon. Let's go to Keith Oppenheim in Daytona Beach.
But there is a continued battering here, and we're going to show it to you right now as we take a look at the surf. Even though we are on the northern edge of the worst part of the storm, now downgraded to a Category 2, you have a really dramatic surf that's coming on right now, perhaps storm surge between 2 and 4 feet. The tide is low, which is good news, but when you combine the factors, the steady winds that we're getting here at near hurricane speed, steady rain.
At 4:30 in the morning was rescued from this home as the hurricane force winds buckled and caved in their second floor.
This is my big screen TV that was over in the corner.
This is Vero Beach, where the tally of damaged homes has hardly begun, but clearly faring the worst, the mobile home communities so common along the Treasure Coast. Palm Beach County now, that flash is a transformer blowing, and that spark is a power line down, just the beginning of the danger to be after the storm. Streetlights dangling, roads impassable. Winds powerful enough to overturn a semi in Vero Beach, to bend these power poles in Melbourne, and to push a decades-old tree onto a family home. Well, it leaves an entire coastline and hundreds of thousands of people battered and weary. The governor got to
downgraded to a tropical storm, but that means it went across Florida as a hurricane, a weakening one, but still a very dangerous, very wet, very destructive storm. You're looking at a 24-hour period from start to finish. The storm has gone at least 300 miles in that time. So unlike Francis, the storm has gone faster. Like Francis, however, it has hit along the east central Florida coast, approximately the same area. So 2 storms within a couple of weeks. And I don't know how they could just manage to take anything more. A couple things to point out here. First of all, obviously the deep reds that were near the center, indicating very strong winds near the core, have now changed to these orange colors. So it is now a tropical storm, and soon it's going to be simply a wind nuisance and a rain problem for northern Florida, for Georgia and the Carolinas as the storm moves up that way as a weakening tropical storm. The extended forecast, by the way, in a couple of days, it'll probably move off the Carolina coast out into the ocean, then become extra tropical. Then it gets a little boost of energy again, and it could grow again, perhaps back to tropical storm or a hurricane status, but that would be over the water and moving away. Now, it covers a shorter period of time. There's the center of circulation, still very heavy rains, heavy winds all across northern and central Florida. Still a violent storm in terms of the wind across northern Florida. Certainly not as bad as it was on the coast, but look at how rapidly the thunderstorms are wrapping around. So you still have a very, very bad situation across northern Florida right now. Not hurricane force winds, but tropical storm force. And now I can kind of see the Lisa may become a hurricane, but the good news is it's moving up to the north. Yeah, I'm doing this only because I have to, because it's just out there. But But it is good news. Everybody relax on this one. It's going to be another Carl. It's going to move to the north. You can kind of tell that by looking at it here. It's a reasonably well formed, coming together. Could be a hurricane, but there you can see the center of circulation of Lisa is right in there. And we're way out in the middle of the ocean, by the way, so it's not really going to bother anybody. I'm going to show you the forecast track. Right now it is a tropical storm, and as it moves to the north here, it's going to continue as a tropical storm, maybe become a minimal hurricane. And there's the position, 8 o'clock. Look, October 1st. 8 a.m., well up to the north, away from anybody. You don't see any landmass. That thing way over there, that might be part of Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. So it's nobody's problem except shipping. And Lisa's taken one of the very weird track. The whole season's been weird. This one's gone this way, down that way, then it reformed, came up there the other way, and now it's just kind of going up there. So Lisa is not going to be a problem, and there's no other tropical disturbance near Africa that shows any signs of organizing anytime soon. All right, let's take a look at Jeanne again. We're using the visible imagery now. Before we showed you the infrared, this is what you would look like in space if you were out there in the satellite, and still a very nice symmetrical hurricane. Some of the hurricanes, after they move over land, get all misshapen and they don't even look symmetrical anymore. This one still does, and that's a tribute to the storm's organization before it came on shore. So this is a really big storm. It was a very powerful storm. I believe it was Category 3 when it came on shore, but last night I talked to Max Mayfield, the Hurricane Center. You may have missed it around midnight or so, and he said that this, you know, as maybe 120, 125 mile an hour storm, but they lost some of their sensors just before the storm reached shore, so they're going to have to wait and see, do some research. Maybe it was a little bit stronger than Category 3, but right now we're listed as a Category 3 hurricane as it moved on shore. Again, you can see a few of the showers that are moving on shore here.
Quickly, I forget. Yesterday afternoon, and there was the eye of the storm as we were watching it. If you recall, it was right on that 27th parallel there, heading due west. And at that time, we had all this very stormy, squally weather on the south side of the storm. So we're going to talk about a couple things here. One is where Jeanne went, where it is now, where it's going, and also what happened to the weather here in Miami-Dade and Broward County and why it wasn't as much as we thought it might be. All right, first of all, let's watch the eye as it goes in right at Stewart right there, and then it comes up, and you can start see it getting less distinct, slows down a little bit, and then heads up and finally makes that northward turn. If you recall, there was a lot of talk about when would that turn be. Was it going to be up in here like this, or was it going to be even further over like that? And it kind of compromised between those two options. And now the tornado watch is up for the northern part of the state and is associated with these strong bands here on the northeast side. It normally is the northeast side of the tropical system where the tornadoes occur, and that will just progress north as Tropical Storm now Jeanne moves on up to the north. Now close up, watch the eye there. That's when it was just the east of Tampa. Now they've had very strong hurricane force winds wrapping around through the Orlando area there. Also strong winds in the Tampa area near hurricane force, and as we've seen up in Daytona Beach, very strong winds and all along the coast of North Florida and up into Georgia. The winds are strong because they're coming off the ocean, so you don't have the friction of the land to slow it down. And it's the friction of the land that generally has slowed down Jeanne now to a tropical storm. But you can see the eye still rotating around right in there, and it still has a pretty good circulation with it. Still some pretty strong bands on the south side, but they're more kind of hit and miss now, which of course is what we saw last night. Now here's the 5 o'clock advisory, 28.8, 82.6, winds down to 65 miles an hour, so now officially Tropical Storm Jeanne, northwest to 12, 973 millibars, so the pressure's coming up as the storm.
Impressive pictures of what is left of Tropical Storm Jeanne. Right now, maximum sustained winds at 40 miles per hour, moving northward into the Atlanta area. You can see, still seeing some heavy downpours located across southeastern Georgia, extending well into the Carolinas and eventually into Virginia as the system makes more of a northeasterly track. We get a look at Storm Scan, giving you a better look at what is expected over the next 24 to 48 hours. Later on tonight is expected to be downgraded to a tropical depression, so this area of low pressure will continue in a northeasterly fashion toward the Carolinas and eventually out over the coast here over the mid-Atlantic by Tuesday night. Again, winds at about 30 miles per hour. losing its strength as it moves again through land, and at this point water vapor imagery is showing some signs of improvements, especially for the state of Florida and eventually for Georgia and the Carolinas. Right now we've got this area of low pressure, this trough, digging in all the way into eastern Gulf of Mexico that is ushering in some drier air across much of the state of Florida. Going to provide less storms today, but the possibility of a few isolated showers and thunderstorms still in the forecast. As far as local radar is concerned, seeing some heavy precipitation just off the coast of Miami-Dade here. Most of the shower activity again moving over northeast, northwestern Bahamas. A few showers spotted earlier around Key West. Most of the shower activity again coming from south to west and moving in a northeasterly fashion, missing much of the coastal areas. Forecast for today is calling for a mix of clouds and sunshine with a few showers possible through the latter parts of the afternoon and early evening hours. A high today of 90 degrees. We'll take a look at the complete forecast coming up in 15 minutes.
All right, and from Alita in the Weather Center, let's send things over to Vero Beach now once again.
We have an opportunity to check in live with Keith Oppenheim, who filed a report for us just a short while ago. Keith, how's it looking out there? So much damage.
Well, the one good thing I can say to you both is that the weather is good today, a good day for cleaning up, which is exactly what residents are starting to do at this mobile home park. Take a look behind me as you can see all of that aluminum siding that got knocked down from Hurricane Jeanne. As we walk over here, you can see a carport that really took a good beating from the storm. The folks here were in the process of cleaning up from Hurricane Francis about 3 weeks ago, and it took them about a good 10 days to get rid of all the debris that was on the ground. Then they did it. It was clean, and now they have...
This tropical wave, just a disturbance at this point, not expected to develop into too much other than just a large amount of clouds as well as a few. And as far as the western Atlantic, nothing brewing in this area. But as we take a look toward the northeastern Atlantic, we still have Tropical Storm Lisa out there. At this point, maximum sustained winds at 70, but it continues to lose time.
Tropical wave, if you will, east of the Lesser Antilles. And it's showing some signs of development, but at the same time, it's being sheared from the west. So even though it's trying to move to the west, it's being sheared and kind of pushed back to the east. So we're not expecting any major development out of that system. We'll have to look closer to home, basically the Bay of Campeche, which is essentially the southwest part of the Gulf of Mexico.
Into a tropical depression in the next day or so. Now, usually this is what happens this time of the year. You get a cold front that stalls, and on the tail end of that front, you'll see these broad areas of low pressure. Most of the forecast models want to take this to the north right now. It's not posing any kind of an immediate threat to South Florida, but even if it does, we'll be sure and watch it very carefully, but it's still days away. We'll keep you posted on that.
Feel its effect. 7's Alita Laresca is in the Weather Center now to tell us when. Alita?
Yes, good afternoon, Delane. Good afternoon, everybody. Here's the system we've been paying close attention to for the last couple of days. If you remember, it was well over the Gulf just a couple days ago, starting to migrate toward the east, upper level system to the north, starting to steer it toward Texas and Louisiana. Right now, deep convection located in the center of the circulation. Right now, is centered over the southwestern Gulf. Will continue toward the north and push toward the east. As far as its immediate effects, won't have any immediate effects here in South Florida, but certainly for the state of Florida, could see increasing winds as early as tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, and rough seas along the west coast and along the Keys, so paying close attention to that. Meanwhile, the outer fringes of the system already impacting portions of Alabama and Mississippi River Valley. This will continue to move north-northeast, and whether or not it stalls or continues to move at this time is still questionable. If it stalls, there is potential for the system to increase as well as better organized, so could possibly turn into a tropical depression as early as this weekend, so keeping a close eye on it. Doesn't look like it's going to hamper your weekend forecast. I'll have that for you. And today's forecast.
Perhaps to develop and organize a little bit more, maybe a tropical depression or tropical storm before too long. If it does in fact become a tropical storm, it would be Matthew. Right now it's riding up to the north and northeast. This system, due to that tight pressure gradient with the high pressure that we showed you over the mid-Atlantic, is causing almost tropical storm force wind gusts right now around both the north central and the northeastern Gulf Coast states. So it is looking a little...
This moisture not only lifting up into the southeast and towards the east coast, but also the end of it kind of bringing some moisture our way, perhaps triggering a few storms here and there, but not a bad weekend at all.
I do want to point out, though, it is out in the Gulf of Mexico. It's southeast of Brownsville by over 250 miles, and winds are sustained at 40. And you should know, despite its impressive signature on the water vapor and on the satellites, it is not expected to intensify beyond its tropical storm status as it makes its way east then northeast. Do want to point that out. So you know. You should also know that it's not affected or won't affect South Florida as it
right now targeting the Louisiana coastline from Lake Pontchartrain back off to the Texas border, moving north-northeast at about 10 miles per hour. To show you exactly where it's going, it will make landfall in Louisiana in the next 10 hours by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, well inland into the southern parts of Mississippi from Jackson all the way over to, say, Shreveport, Louisiana, before turning into a tropical depression and moving through Arkansas on up through the Tennessee Valley, Memphis, all the way up towards Little Rock. Now, coming up in Maine weather, we'll talk more about our beautiful weather here locally, plus one more area of interest in the tropics could possibly be Nicole in the next 24 hours. We'll update you on this little system around Bermuda and have a cool forecast for the next 5 days.
Mantenemos toda esa humedad alcanzando la región debido a una perturbación que se mantiene hacia el extremo este de lo que es el Golfo.